Verne had the training camp coming up. He had sponsored the 1972 Olympic wrestling team with Dan Gable on it, and we went to the Olympics. And he had also sponsored Ken Patera, who was the weightlifter, and Ken was going to turn pro wrestler after the Olympics. So we came back in September, and I told my dad I wanted to try out, and I got my partner, or a teammate of mine at Minnesota, Jim Brunzell. He was playing semi-pro football and not making any money. And I said, "Why don't you give wrestling a crack?" He said, "Well, I don't know how to wrestle." I said, "Well, you're going to learn in this camp." And so we had Brunzell, myself, Patera. Another guy that we played football with in Minnesota, but never played much because he was a non-predictor, was Ric Flair. And we had the Iron Sheik, Khosrow Vaziri, who was on the Iranian Olympic team. And one of the coaches there asked Verne if he had trained him to be a pro. And in fact, my mom gave him the name, the Iron Sheik.
Oh, wow.
He was over at dinner one night. She said, "You're the Iron Sheik." And that stuck to him. And then we had Bob Bruggers. Bob had been playing pro football, and he was a little bit older. It was a little harder for him. We go 6 days a week, 6 hours a day in an old barn with one light over it. And I'm sure a lot of people have heard that story. And, it was the hardest thing we ever did in our life. But when we came out of there, Verne looked at us. He said, "You guys don't have to be afraid of anybody in the business."
Mm-hmm.
And we really didn't understand that until they sent Jim and I to Atlanta one day. We were supposed to go down there for a couple of weeks, and we were going to wrestle Bob Orton Sr. and Dick Slater for their title. And we got down there, and in the locker room was a guy named Brute Bernard and his manager. So I went down, I sat down, and introduced myself, and he turned to me and he said, "Your dad is a something sucker." I said, "Oh, yeah. I'm sure he felt the same way about you." And he looked at me. As he got up, him and his manager went in the other room, the locker room, and sat down. So I said to Jim, "Come on, let's go back in there with him." So we followed him in there, and I sat down, and I said, "Brute, do we have a problem?" He says, "No." But it was the respect that we got from coming out of Verne's camp, because, a whole last hour we did submission wrestling. And with him and Billy Robinson teaching us, holds that nobody in the business really knew. But when you clamped it on, they knew they were in trouble.